You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, Mr. Bob Harris. Gentlemen, it is week 12. Amazing. It just flies. I say this every single week. Here we are, week 12. Mr. Harris, what is good? New Mexico tonight, sir.
All is good. Everything's good, except maybe some of the injury situations we'll be dealing with this week. Of course, all those create opportunities, except for Brian Hill. Apparently, no opportunities will be created for that fellow, of course. Filling in for Devonta Freeman last week against the Carolina Panthers and what we all thought was a great matchup, because it was. But you know what? It's just another reminder that the best decisions, best plays don't always yield the best outcomes. That's why they play the games. It's the oblong spheroid theory. It bounces funny ways, sometimes right back in your face. Kyle, how are you this evening?
I mean, until you threw salt in that wound that I think we all share, I was doing well. But regardless, still doing well. We got a pretty solid Thursday night game coming up. So
we do, and we'll get into that. I'll quickly touch on the Monday night game. A couple injuries in there. Of course, both teams on bye, but things to be watching for going forward. Tyreek Hill had a hamstring issue. They listed him as questionable to return, and he remained on the sidelines the whole time. But, you know, that's something to watch. Going to get an MRI in the coming days, so keep an eye on the main page of the site for more info on that. Damian Williams also hurt. LaShawn McCoy concussed, so plenty going on there. We've got some other injuries, too, we'll be looking at. You know, we'll all be watching the Steelers. Are they going to have anyone to play? James Conner seems really uncertain to play. Benny Snell could come back. Maybe we'll dig into him. I'm sure you guys are very excited. It's a pretty, not the worst matchup, right? I mean, you know, so I don't know. We'll dig through some of those. We'll start out, though. I just want to touch base on the Thursday night game because there are also a lot of injuries there, situations to be mindful of if you're listening to this prior to Thursday night. T.Y. Hilton is going to be a little bit of an issue that we're going to have to watch. Will Fuller on the other side. We know T.Y. Hilton destroys the Houston Texans. He's a Texan killer, always has been, always will be, it turns out. But the thing I wanted to touch on is the running back situation, because we're all looking for warm bodies at this point, guys we can plug in maybe into our season-long lineups or cheap DFS plays, etc. But in this Thursday night game, Jonathan Williams came in and filled in for Marlon Mack, who fractured his hand, had a procedure done to repair that. He'll be out a little while. But then today, Jordan Wilkins turns up as a limited participant in practice. How much does that slow your roll, Justin, on one Jonathan Williams if you were rolling that way at all?
Well, it would appear to be a committee. I mean, I don't know what the hell happened with Nyheim Hines. It's like, you know, the three of us were eager to see him have a James White role this year. It's going to be a committee. I mean, without Marlon Mack, you can see Jordan Wilkins play. Jonathan Williams had 31 snaps. This team is in shambles. A few months ago, we would have said this is a team that's going to compete for the AFC. I'm not intrigued at all. Although the Houston Texans have had their holes on defense, but, you know, gun to my head, it would be a situation that I would certainly avoid. And you know, 10 touches for Wilkins maybe if he plays, 10 touches for Jonathan Williams, something like that. I mean, they're a mess, and that's the reality of it on the offensive side of the ball.
Right. Well, we don't condone violence here, so I won't be holding a gun to anyone's head, except maybe yours, Justin. I don't know. Maybe that's reasonable.
The first time.
This is true. Kyle, just, you know, what's your take on this? We got Deshaun Watson coming off a miserable showing, fell short of one Lamarckable Jackson, my guy Lamar. Yeah. I'm going to start claiming him as my own just because I feel like I want to, because I love him that much. So how do you feel about the Texans side of the equation here, Kyle?
Yeah, I really think the absence of Will Fuller has been kind of, I don't want to say crushing, because their offense has still gotten something. Like, aside last week, they still had other good offensive performances. But really, when you look at, like, just Deshaun Watson's efficiency based on who he's throwing to, Will Fuller is, like, over 11 adjusted yards per attempt, I believe, throughout his career, and nobody else is at even, like, 10, or, like, they're just over 9. Is just so incredibly, like, he gives that sort of Deshaun Jackson efficiency bump to every offense he goes to, whether it's on the passes that target him or just the way he forces defense to play against him. And despite the fact that he's logged back-to-back limited practices, I think their timetable for him returning was still like at least a week away initially when he suffered this injury. So I don't think we'll see him play, at which point like you're going to get a ton of volume from DeAndre Hopkins. You're going to get a decent amount of deep ball volume from Kenny Stills, and I think both those guys are, obviously DeAndre Hopkins is startable, Kenny Stills startable as well. I just think like you get a lot of upside even if his floor is still not very good. But yeah, it's definitely not good for this offense, and Will Fuller's not in.
Just to be clear, hit the website. And Fuller, it sounded like he was close last week to me, and that maybe they held him out last week because of the Thursday night kickoff, hoping to get him back. That doesn't guarantee they will. Bill O'Brien said on Tuesday morning that Fuller's still a game time decision, but I'm totally with you. I think he is a little more vital to this whole affair than we've seen. A couple other ones, and I talked about James Conner, the running backs, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, both in the concussion protocol, so that'll be something to watch as well. James Washington may be a guy that you can have some hopes for. Oh, it's Mason Rudolph as his quarterback. What was I thinking? But, look, we're desperation time. It's week 12. There's been a lot of attrition. So check the injury reports, get in tune with that. A couple other thoughts. Leonard Fournette, 9 carries last week, you guys? Doug Marrone says he blames himself. I'm thinking back to a time in Minnesota, not that long ago, about a year ago, when John DeFilippo was getting in the doghouse for throwing the ball too much in Minnesota. Here he goes to Jacksonville, and we're seeing a similar situation now that Nick Foles is back in the lineup. Kyle, quick take on the Jacksonville offense. If it's not, look, the receivers are great plays, but what are they doing with our Leonard Fournette?
So this is really funny. Like, roughly paraphrasing that whole quote was like that he regrets not getting Leonard Fournette the ball enough. He recognized that they were down exactly, I think it was 17 points. He recognized that they were down. He thought they needed to score fast by passing the ball, which is great. That's exactly how you play when you're down. You have to play quick-hitting offense, try and get back in. And then right after he said, but I realized I was wrong and we need more of a balanced attack. Like, what a backwards way of thinking that, like, well, we need to run this balanced attack when we're behind because reasons? I don't know. I do think that because, like, what he's saying, regardless of if it's good football analysis or not, because of what he's saying, I think we're going to see a decent amount, like, a good amount of Leonard Fournette, who we've already seen a ton of this year. He's, like, top 5 or 6 in touches per game. So, yeah, I expect a lot of Leonard Fournette, and I think DJ Chark is probably the only receiver I'm going to be looking to on a weekly basis. D.D. Westbrook is, like, a fine desperation play, but, like, it feels very evident to me that Chark is, like, the guy on this offense.
Chark is the real deal, for sure. Justin, Matt Nagy is not planning to give up the play calling in Chicago. Does that make it easier not to play any Bears?
Yeah, they're another offense that just has you scratching your head, and I think it starts at the quarterback position. I mean, it's been a disaster. They moved up to get him. Right, Mike Mayock was going, what happened? They threw all that money at Glennon. It's a mess. It really is. And you would think that this is a team that could run the football. That's what they're historically pretty good at the last couple of years. Cannot run the football particularly well at all. So I don't think it matters who's play calling. It's an offense that doesn't have any fantasy goodness in my mind. I mean, it's a shame for a guy like Allen Robinson if you drafted him and I just can't get the football appropriately. And that's where I'm at there. And I was optimistic about Trey Burton coming into 2019. That hasn't worked out. It's a Bears.
You mean Ben Broniker? No.
Yeah, right. That's where we're at. Adam Shaheen, the second year kid out of the D2 school there, Ashland. But yeah, it's an offense. We talked about a couple offenses that are just kind of fizzling away between the Colts. I mean, now that you look at the Houston Texans, are kind of a mess. The Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, these are teams that are just kind of like fading away.
And the common denominator in many of these cases is the quarterback situation. It was surprising. I think Jeff Driscoll looks like he could do enough to keep some of the guys we're interested in, the Marvin Jones, the Kenny Gallaudays. Maybe not all of them at once, but maybe some of them at the same time. But the mystery man, right. Kyle Bo Scarborough. If you're in a season-long league and you're in a bind, can you go there?
I mean, can you? Yeah. And did he get a majority or maybe, I guess, plurality would probably be the correct term based on how many carries he got. But, like, did he lead the team in carries? Yeah. Are they going to score a ton of points under Jeff Driscoll? No. I think it's more of, like you said, where he's enough to keep one player afloat at a time. But the whole offense afloat, let's not carry away. Yeah, you can play him. I think I'd still be targeting Jonathan Williams probably. I still think as long as Devonta Freeman's out, we saw Brian Hill get the work. It's just he wasn't very good with it, but he got, like, I think it was around about 2/3 of the team's carries. Yeah, I think that's he's number 3 in terms of priority for me. I guess if Brian Hill gets cut or if he's still out there for some reason, like, honestly, he should after what he did to me last week, I should have him in all my leagues. But
Right. I feel like, though, this is like everyone's going to run away from him, and he's just going to come back with a vengeance no matter who they play, what's happening. This is Brian Hill week for sure, and none of us will be playing.
Projecting
0%
really close
ownership.
to 2 touchdowns. He had 1 touchdown he put in.
Right,
Called
called back.
on holding.
It was
And
a holding,
Wilson vultured another one. Like, it was
Just-
in his grasp, and he just didn't take it.
Just like
No.
my guy Russell Gage had one right in his grasp,
I
but he
know.
let it touch the floor.
Now, you talked to a beat, Bob, last week, and you said there was some uncertainty about the workload in terms of, like, the passing game heading into Sunday.
The thought was maybe we'd see Kenyon Barner in a bit of a gadget role or at least some specialized roles. You know, he had a huge punt return last week. My guess is they'll try to force him into the mix a little bit more, maybe in that same way. But right now it's the passing attack you want to play. And by the way, who traded out that defense for a real defense over the bye? They moved Raheem Morris from the wide receivers coach back to his natural side of the ball, the defense. They changed up the defensive signal calling a little bit with Morris and another assistant taking some of that off of Dan Quinn's plate. And it seems to have been relatively successful.
Too little, too late.
Probably so, but still a good sign. But it'll just leave us wondering every week, whoever the Falcons are playing, which defense are we going to get?
Right.
We won't know until it's too late, and that's the horrible thing. It's not like you're playing a tight end against Arizona. Sad thing there's a bye this week. All right, let's dig into the DFS slate this week, guys. I'll start with you, Justin, at the quarterback position. Please give me some good plays.
All right. Well, I don't find it to be a necessity to pay up. You have Russell Wilson at the top, 6,800, traveling 3,000 miles to Philadelphia. I mean, he's a tournament play for me, 6,800. I have uber confidence in him. I do like Matt Ryan at home against the Bucs. I think that they can be shredded. If I'm going to pay up, it's going to be Ryan over Wilson tonight. I like the home matchup. Julio Jones is projecting well at all. If we go down a little bit, I do have some interest, and this is scary to say, but Baker Mayfield is showing signs. Another team, too little, too late. But
Great matchup.
Great. The matchup is for the ages. We love Nick Chubb. We like Jarvis Landry, and it's only a matter of time until we see Odell Beckham go off. So I can have Baker Mayfield at home against the Miami Dolphins, sub 6K. It just seems like it seems right for me. So I have a lot of Baker Mayfield. I'm not 100% confident about that. And then a shade under him, in kind of the same feel, is Sam Darnold.
Yes.
Right, coming on late, a little bit of weaponry there. Jamison Crowder's been okay. He's got Robbie Anderson. Le'Veon Bell is kind of, winging it. He's kicking around. We thought he was going to be moved potentially. But it's interesting to see this, because you give up on these guys and they burned your season-long teams. But in DFS, it really doesn't matter. And there are some players that are playing well, even though their seasons are over. So, yeah, Mayfield, Darnold for me. It's certainly not going to be Dak Prescott, who I loved last week. But it'll be tonight. It's Matt Ryan. It's Darnold. It's Baker Mayfield.
This worries me greatly because I agree with a number of these selections, and normally I totally can't agree with anything Justin says. Kyle, help me get past this. Who do you like at quarterback?
Well, one of the games Justin talked about, I think, is going to be one of the best games to stack. Jameis Winston and the Bucs are taking on Atlanta. I would go to Jameis Winston borderline in cash. Like, he's just getting so much volume. Like, in his past 7 games, he's attempted 40 or more passes every time but one. And his passes are so deep that every pass is worth just more yards because he goes he just hucks it up to Mike Evans, and Evans going to do what Evans going to do on those air yards. Might fall down afterwards, don't care. you just get so many, like, your probability of getting the 300-yard bonus is so high. In that span that I talked about, 6 or 7 for the 300-yard bonus. He's gone over 20, 6 or 7 times. Like, you can just get so many like, his passing equity. He's not a great rusher. He does have, like, a small amount of rushing equity now and then. Actually, in his past 2 games, he has 63? What? Oh, dude.
A little bit nicked up in this one, though. Got the ankle issue from last week. It doesn't sound like it'll keep him off the field or anything, but maybe limit that mobility. But please continue, sir.
And Justin stole another good one. Baker, great play. I think that's kind of, it might end up getting popular by the end of the week, but as of right now, I think he'll be one of the better plays. And then beyond that, those will be my top guys. I think you can play Drew Brees versus Carolina. I know Kyle Allen looked awful last week, so you'd think that Carolina might struggle to score a bit. I do think the true Kyle Allen lies somewhere in between there and what we've seen. Like, he had the 4 interceptions. Right now, he started his career, I guess he started technically last year, week 17, but he started his career with a 4-touchdown game. People are calling for the end of his career with this 4-interception game. I think he's fine, and with Christian McCaffrey, you can always score, so I think Drew Brees will still have to at least do some passing, and he's only 6,600. I think he could be priced up a little more, and I wouldn't be surprised. So I kind of, I'll have a tight quarterback core this week. That's probably where I'll stick to.
Right, and by the way, throwing 4 interceptions was the thing this week, so Kyle Allen not alone in that, said Phillip Rivers and others. Phillip Rivers, as many kids as interceptions over the last 2 weeks. Are you there yet? I don't know.
Yeah, no. Almost.
Kyle, give me your running backs, please.
So somehow, so he didn't score a touchdown, and McCaffrey still went over 30. It was like 30, I don't know, 1 or 2, 30, 33. So you don't need, like, there are so many avenues that Christian McCaffrey has to success. If they're down, he's going to catch so many dump-offs from Kyle Allen. If they are winning, it's probably because Christian McCaffrey scored multiple times. He's a threat for both the 100-yard receiving bonus and the 100-yard rushing bonus on DraftKings, and they did not price him up again. He's still 10.5, which sounds like a lot, but he's just crushed that every single time he goes out for it. Like, I just can't imagine going off Christian McCaffrey at this point. I don't think there's as much value as there was last week with all the value running backs and like Deebo Samuel. I'm still just going to find a way to get up to him. Outside of that, I think you could also maybe go to a DJ Moore on that team, or even just stack like a Greg Olsen or a DJ Moore with McCaffrey and run it back with Alvin Kamara. And typically I'm not looking to stack running backs in the same game, because you think if one running back is excelling, it's usually coming off of these like chunk runs, which are going to eat up a lot of clock. Doesn't have to happen with either McCaffrey or Kamara, because they're both just such talented receivers and they get so much run in the receiving game that I don't mind stacking those two with each other. Outside of that, old Uncle Lenny Fournette, 7,300, setting records for yardage and attempts with no touchdowns. I just think these things just bounce back. Like, just over the course of NFL history, these things are so rare and they don't tend to repeat themselves. Beyond that, Kareem Hunt would be an interesting option. I think he has like 9 and 8 targets in the past 2 weeks, just like playing this Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey role. And he is, I don't say this a lot about running backs because I tend to think running back talent doesn't matter. He's a guy who like historically has been measurably better than other running backs, like even controlling for offense in terms of like the tackles he breaks and the volume he gets. So I really like Kareem Hunt as like a sneaky play this week. He got priced up, so hopefully that'll keep his ownership down. Outside of that, I think Justin, what are you rocking?
Hey, Kareem Hunt, what an interesting story. Led the NFL in rushing 2 years ago, and now he has a complimentary role, and deservingly so for him to be in Cleveland, in my opinion. But 5,600 seems a little much, given that he doesn't have the Kareem Hunt role that he had in Kansas City. Every week we talk about Christian McCaffrey. It's like, for me to get off him, he's probably got to be around 12K. But like you said, the game script doesn't matter. His involvement is just, they're up, he's going to get the ball, they're down. He does get a test in New Orleans against the Saints. They've been pretty stout. He's got to get around 30, 35 points every week to pay that off. I feel like there's going to be a week where he just comes back to earth. And it just hasn't happened yet. So 10-5 seems a lot. I do like Alvin Kamara. Similar player, similar role. The usage doesn't need to get 25 carries a game, but he's going to get 8 to 10 targets. We love that. I'm saving 2,300 with Alvin Kamara. I go down a little bit and look at Saquon Barkley. Is he going to be shut down? We know he's got the Q tag. He's had some shoulder issues. But against the Chicago Bears, we saw Josh Jacobs kind of do his thing in London. I like Barkley in tournaments. I don't think people are going to be on him. I think his ceiling is nearly as high as anybody's, and you're getting a discount off of McCaffrey for 3K. So in tournaments, I will have some Saquon Barkley.
Going against the Bears without Akeem Hicks has been a little bit easier going, says
right.
Todd
They've been
Gurley.
leaky. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. They've been leaky, and we're talking about Saquon Barkley. I don't think he's going to be highly owned. So good there. Leonard Fournette, I would have to agree. The squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of narrative. He's going to want to get the football. He's healthy. We talk about that. He's never healthy. Neither is Will Fuller, by the way, guys. I feel like, same old with Will Fuller. So when Leonard Fournette is healthy, you ride him, and that's the identity of their team. You mentioned a couple wide receivers there. I think he is still obviously the focal point of that offense. Look, Joe Mixon has been getting the volume, and I liked him at 5,500. Liked him the week before, 32 touches. Another guy, win or lose, he's been involved in the passing game. I know he's got a home matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I could see myself going back to Joe Mixon based on volume. I think where he is due. I know that's not a good way to look at things, but we talk about Joe Mixon, one of the best running backs in the NFL. So Miles Sanders is going to get the lion's share of work at home. 5K. Does not appear that Jordan Howard is going to play. I think that Miles Sanders is going to get the football close to 20 times. Beat Seattle on the ground. 5K seems right. He did burn me last week as well as Brian Hill. I was actually more optimistic about Sanders than I was Hill because of the passing game involvement. That's where I'm at running back. So tonight, it's Alvin Kamara. It's Leonard Fournette. I will have some Saquon Barkley in tournaments. And you know what? One more name I'll mention. There's a ton, Kyle. I'll shoot it over to you. I think Ezekiel Elliott is in play. They're going to take away Amari Cooper and probably Gallup. And I think the one way that you're going to be able to beat the Patriots, keep the Pats offense off the field, is running the football. And I think 7,500 for Ezekiel Elliott is a good way to do things. So I'll probably go there too.
Quickly, Justin, any interest in any of the Patriots running back? Does the return of Isaiah Wynn excite you in the least bit? Seems like, they're a little upset with the offensive output. And by they, I mean Tom Brady, the only guy who matters. Does Isaiah Wynn change anything this week?
He certainly does. I mean, you better believe that he does. And that's in obviously in pass protection as well. I mean, you're seeing, even despite the wins, a discouraged Tom Brady, and that's the word around here. They really don't know. He's been leaned on like he has been historically. Like it's just been kind of, it's obviously Tom Brady's team, but they've been winning in other ways, and he hasn't been the Tom Brady of himself. So look, James White is a centerpiece of this offense, and he has been for some time. So if there's a running back, whether it's Burkhead, it's not going to be Sony Michel. It's going to be James White every single week, dependable, relied upon by Tom Brady, and that's where I'm at. But from a fantasy angle, I mean, none of these guys are going to knock your socks off, and I don't think that the return of Isaiah Wynn is going to all of a sudden give them push where Sony Michel turns into this, Christian McCaffrey overnight, because I think he is mediocre at best, and I think it's another miss by the Patriots.
He's mediocre. Did you just call him a tight end? Kyle, let's get into the wide receiver. Before we do, I just wanted to ask you about one guy. We were Justin talking about Joe Mixon. We're seeing a little bit more Giovanni Bernard in the mix here. I think just because they just don't have a hell of a lot going on. And I have been surprised at how much they've kept the running backs in the game. Does Bernard coming on more, does that worry you about Mixon, or does that create an opportunity with Bernard?
I don't think Bernard's getting enough for me to create to say it creates an opportunity for him, but absolutely it does worry me about Joe Mixon. He's gone over 4 targets twice this season. They were both early in the season, and last season I thought he was turning into this true 3 down, just on the level below a Dalvin Cook level. I don't want to say Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, but this guy who you just absolutely have to get into space, and that garners 5 or 4 targets a game. That's not really the case. Giovanni Bernard is just that good. But if there was a spot that game script could be favorable for Joe Mixon, it would be at home versus a just completely and utterly depleted Pittsburgh team. So I do think this week kind of sets up to have that not matter as much. But that was my argument for not playing him last week, is exactly what you said. And I ended up biting me because he scored, but I can live with that. I think it still makes sense.
All right, twist me up some wide receivers.
At wide receiver, for me, it starts with, at least in tournaments, I guess if you don't want to pay it per receiver in cash, I get it because of the volatility. But yeah, dude, you just got to get Mike Evans. He's only 7,300. He is absolutely annihilating air yards. And I think at some point in the season, there was a legitimate argument between him and Chris Godwin. I just can't imagine making that argument now. Mike Evans only 7 more targets ahead of him. That's less than 1 per game, yeah. But like the air yards, he's got like nearly 600 more air yards than him. And for me, like that's where a lot of that's where your actual yards comes from, is getting the ball down the field. So for me, it starts and ends with Mike Evans, and I think they're only 100 salary dollars apart. I think they're 73 and 7,200. Like there's just no reason to go just on a projection basis. Of course, you can make the argument that if Mike Evans is high owned, Chris Godwin's a good pivot play because they're so negatively correlated. It's just so hard for both of them to pay value at their high prices. You'd need like a 50-point game from Jameis Winston. But Mike Evans is just such a better play. In another game that I really want to look at, Seattle versus Philly, for the exact same reason. I'm going DK Metcalf. He's not quite the slam dunk play over Tyler Lockett, but when you factor in price, it's just such a, like, I would absolutely take DK Metcalf at 6,300 over Tyler Lockett at 7,600. He's getting more air yards on the season. He's got like a way longer depth of target, and I think it's because of like the role shift we've seen in Tyler Lockett. They play DK Metcalf just like a lot on the outside, and Russell Wilson just has no problem hitting him on these deep balls, whereas Tyler Lockett is getting these lower higher percentage plays in the slot, but that doesn't really conduce a high fantasy ceiling. And Michael Thomas coming back down from 9,900 despite beating his value again. I think he had over 30 again. Michael Thomas is the Christian McCaffrey of running backs. Dude, he is just getting it done. I think he's probably going to set the record for catch percentage this season, and that's sort of the reason that receivers don't have these high floors, is because if they get 7 or 8 targets and they just happen to have a wonky low catch percentage, they bust. But Michael Thomas has broken the mold on that. And then Odell Beckham. I'm just going to keep going back to the Odell Beckham well until it hits. And of course, if we're playing Baker Mayfield, we have to be playing Odell Beckham. So that's probably a few spots where I'm going.
I'm just going to say, I don't like to, usually flaunt all my insider info that I get, but sources tell me can't guard Mike. That's all I know.
Cannot guard Mike.
So Justin, your wide receivers this week.
So, I tweeted something the other day about Michael Thomas being the best wide receiver in the NFL, and there were a lot of people that agreed, and then there were people that didn't agree because of his situation. So he's maybe a victim. He's not a victim of circumstance. Some of these other wide receivers like Allen Robinson they're just not in good situations. Thomas is in New Orleans under Sean Payton, Drew Brees, so it's kind of worked out well. But if DeAndre Hopkins was there, we'd say the same thing. And he's obviously up there at the top. Listen, I'm going to go back to Michael Thomas as well. Obviously, we like that game. It's 9,300. He's pricey, but like Kyle said, he's the Christian McCaffrey of wide receivers. Consistent 10, 15 targets every week. I think you have to pay up for him. Otherwise, you're going to miss the boat. It's 30-point weeks if you're not on him. I will tend to, it's been hard for me. I will be honest with you, with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans every week, and I've been going back to Chris Godwin, and it's been Mike Evans, just been a complete S show there. So you got to have one of them, though, and it's been Mike Evans quietly because a lot of the talk this offseason has been about Chris Godwin, but Mike Evans has been Mike Evans. I'm going to go to Odell Beckham, unfortunately, but like Kyle said, you're going to have Baker Mayfield. We're expecting an Odell Beckham week. This is the week he'll probably have it, or you could pivot off him and get cute and get yourself some Jarvis Landry, who is projected really high this week as well. We had John Brown last week, and John Brown went off. The matchup is going to be more difficult this week with Chris Harris against the Denver Broncos, but I think you got to find yourself having some John Brown in tournaments. Gentlemen, Julian Edelman is going to be probably a staple of my cash games. It's just the way it is. I mean, you talk about nonverbal communication, focal points of the Patriots offense. It's Julian Edelman. It's James White. Julian Edelman has had double-digit targets every week since week 5. In week 5, he had 9. So you can rest assured he's going to be peppered. That's just the way it goes. He's going to have up around 20 DraftKings points. No interest in any of the Cowboys wide receivers named Michael Gallup or Amari Cooper because they're going to be blanketed by McCourty and Stephon Gilmore. So if you're going to get cute, Dak Prescott has been throwing the football. It's probably going to be Randall Cobb if you want to get cute. And we have seen Randall Cobb a la Green Bay Packers a couple of years ago mode the last few weeks. Back-to-back touchdowns, consecutive weeks, 7-8 targets respectively. Give me some Cobb, 4,800. The Cowboys are going to score points, and I think that they're going to come from Randall Cobb. They're going to come from Ezekiel Elliott. They're certainly not going to come from Gallup or Amari Cooper.
Interesting. So dive into the sea of Jacob Hollister. I'm calling the tight end position Jacob Hollister's now, just because I want to. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, he's taken over for Will Dissly. They like the tight end in Seattle. Not the easiest matchup this week against Philadelphia, 4,300, kind of priced up in the sea of mediocrity, which is embarrassing. Only 4,300 seems priced up. But, yeah, why not? I think he's somewhat touchdown dependent. Could he bust? He certainly could. 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. There are a number of options this week that I think you have to look at. And another guy is Ryan Griffin. Chris Herndon was being touted all off season. We liked Herndon as a top 12 tight end. Well, that story ended really quickly. I think Ryan Griffin has found rapport with Sam Darnold. I like Darnold this week. I like Ryan Griffin at home against the Oakland Raiders. Still a little pricey. I mean, these are not sea of mediocrity prices that I gravitate towards. I kind of like sub 4K tight ends, but there's just a shade over it. Not going to go back to Fant. Greg Olsen kind of burned us. I suppose you could talk me into Big Vance McDonald and Jonnu Smith, they're both projecting well this week. So in the sea of mediocrity, there's a ton of tight ends that you don't have to pay up for. Of course, Austin Hooper might play this week. Bob, do you think he's going to play this week?
I do not think he's going to play this week. The original ETA was like a month or the expected time down. So, look, they're not going to rule anyone out this early in the week. I think they're saying Devonta Freeman has a chance. I know Dan Quinn said this. I do not believe what Dan Quinn said. So,
right.
And did Jaden Graham do enough to rise up on the radar there, Justin?
Say that again.
Jaden Graham, did he do enough in his debut in Hooper's stead to rise up the ranks enough to be a cheap play?
No. And the sea of mediocrity is a sea of mediocrity. I don't really want the
very shallow is the sea.
You know who jumped out at me was Evan Ingram at 5,200. He's got the Q tag, but let's be honest. When healthy, when on the field, if healthy, Evan Ingram can be as good as any of these guys that we talk about week to week at any given week. And I'm talking about Kelsey. I'm talking about Zach Ertz. I'm talking about Darren Waller. So 5,200 seems like a discount for Evan Ingram. Would I put him in cash games? Probably not. But I think he's a damn fine tournament play based on the price. We've seen Evan Ingram priced up around, I want to say, 7K early in the season, 6,500. At one point in the season, which is getting near Travis Kelce money. So I will have some Ingram. Go ahead. You going to say something?
I was just going to say the glorious Travis Kelce I saw at Stadio Azteca on Monday night is blasphemous. You comparing anyone to him, but that's okay. Go ahead.
No. And kudos to Mexico City. The field looked in a lot better shape than we used to. Yeah.
It was playable.
You would think that they would nip. It's playable. There was grass. There was grass.
It's better for player health that way. If you can't plant your foot as hard, you are less likely. This is true. You are less likely to suffer those like really damaging soft tissue injuries.
There was an aerial shot of that stadium last year, and I was like, "What am I looking at? Am I looking at a desert? I couldn't make out what it was. You think they would put some? I don't know.
The sad fact is they did put some, and it just still didn't work. So Justin, have you exhausted your tight end?
I have, as much as I like talking about the position, I'm done.
Kyle, please chime in.
All right, so if I want to pay up with the Jacob Hollister this week, I'll go with expensive Jacob Hollister, Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz in the past. That's what we're calling the tight end position now. It's Jacob Hollister. We played a Jacob Hollister roll out there.
This week you did there, and I appreciated it greatly.
He's very in consideration for me for cash this week because of the game script. That's probably where I'll be looking at. But in tournaments, I think Zach Ertz is just a phenomenal play. 11 targets in each of the past 2 weeks. His 2 best fantasy performances in the past 2 weeks. One of those came against the Patriots. And he doesn't need touchdowns necessarily to go off. Last week, he was a 6-yard catch away from hitting like well over 20 points. Just missed the 100-yard bonus on DK. But they're just running their offense through him again with Alshon Jeffrey. This week he's questionable. Last week he did not play. Not sure if he'll play this week, but they're also obviously without Deshaun Jackson. Nelson Aguilar is very bad at football. So all those factors basically make and I guess Jordan Howard is out too, which could shift them to a more pass-heavy mindset. So Zach Ertz at 6K, I think we're finally seeing just like the volume we got with last year's Zach Ertz and the efficiencies bouncing back a bit for him. I'm just going to skip over Jacob Hollister because
and by the way, Stephon
I was just going to say that
Gilmore will make you cry. Zach Ertz will cry if we don't pick him. That's why.
And he chased him around all Sunday. Zach Ertz still had 9 receptions, 11 targets, close to 100 yards. So, and Stephon Gilmore, pound for pound, is the best corner in the NFL today, period. And Zach Ertz had a pretty good outing. So I think that's a great call.
I cried a lot, according to Stephon Gilmore. So go ahead and finish off your tight end views, Kyle, and then dive into the defensive side of things.
Yeah, at the Jacob Hollister position, Jacob Hollister, obviously, it's named after him. Seattle on the road are going to, right now they are, Vegas has them as underdogs, which I find surprising, but nonetheless, Vegas has them as underdogs. That could mean more throwing for the team. I think it's, I don't know, I bet the other side of that line I bet the Seahawks side pretty easily, honestly. But, yeah, if you're telling me Russell Wilson is going to have to throw more because they're underdogs, give me all the sweet Jacob Hollister. Beyond that, we saw the Bucs tight end situation completely flip on its head for what would be like the third or fourth time this season. I think it was probably just a product of Brate being banged up over the past 2 weeks. He played 15 and 11 snaps in the 2 and 3 weeks ago. Last week, he seemed at full health. He seemed at more than full health. He seemed to be like a superhero at the tight end position, getting 14 targets. So I think if I'm running James Winston builds, I would run him with like Mike Evans and then Cameron Brate. And then finally, if I'm paying down, actually about the same price, Mike Gesicki getting a lot of volume. It's Miami Dolphins pass volume, so it's not worth as much, but 6 targets in each of the past 3 games. Very true, very true. So I think both those guys are in play to run back with your Baker Mayfield builds because I'm always looking to stack with somebody on the other team. So for me, I think Gesicki is probably where I'd go, but Devontae Parker, honestly, a pretty good play as well. Defense this week, I think the prices are actually pretty good compared to the past few weeks, but I do think news breaking will be a big factor in whether I play Cincinnati or not. You're telling me they are at home and they're playing, maybe they're playing a team without Juju Smith-Schuster, without Deontay Johnson. James Conner doesn't really make or break for me, but without their starting running back, it just seems like they're so depleted, and then already they're on their backup quarterback who's just looked like, at best, effectively timid, and at worst, just awful. So I think that's one of the better values of defense. Beyond that, Jacksonville, I don't know. Am I a fish for just continually betting against Ryan Tannehill because maybe it was just the fact that he's in Miami, but generally quarterback efficiency and quarterback accuracy stick with them wherever they go. And he was bad for so long, and I guess I just want to keep betting on him being bad. But I don't know. I think it's a better correlation play with Leonard Fournette than it is to run it by itself. But I do like, if you're running Leonard Fournette, run it back with the Jacksonville defense as opposed to the Tennessee receiving options or anything. So I like those two. And then an interesting way to get off of, if you're not running Christian McCaffrey in tournaments, Kyle Allen's not very good. New Orleans at home, they're a pretty solid defense despite 2 weeks ago, and probably last week against the Bucs as well. Not the best performances, but I still think they're a talented defense. They're at home, they're favored, and they play Kyle Allen. All of those factors make you a great defense, and at 3,300, you're not breaking the bank for them. So that's probably where I'll be going.
I'm going to play the New England Patriots at home.
Shocking.
100%. You say that, but I'm not even the biggest Pats fan.
No, I'm not surprised. I will be playing them too.
3,300. I mean, at home, at Gillette Stadium, I don't really care who they play. I mean, if Toby Patrick Mahomes is coming to town, you might be a little scared. Dak Prescott, they're going to scheme well against these guys. No question about it. When you look at the Patriots, I mean, there's about 7 defenses priced in front of them this week. This defense is averaging 18 fantasy points a game, 19 interceptions, 9 forced fumbles, 37 sacks, 6 touchdowns. They got back at it in Philadelphia last week. 5 sacks against Carson Wentz just made him look like a high school quarterback. So I'm locked and loaded, and I'll go down with the Patriot ship at that price because you're guaranteed 10 fantasy points on DraftKings, I think, when this unit goes out there. Nearly guaranteed. And we've seen them on numerous occasions have 25, 26 points. I mean, 30 points. Christian McCaffrey, number of points as your defense at 3,300. It's been crazy. But they got forgotten about because they went to Baltimore, and your boy Lamar Jackson was fantastic. But they're at home at Gillette. Dak Prescott is not Lamar Jackson. And I think that they're going to beat on the Cowboys, and they're going to make some plays.
Fair enough. I guess that's a reasonable assessment. And yes, I was dogging you about your whole Patriot thing, but in this case, it was absolutely proper.
Mm-hmm.
Above board. Even a good play. So let's wrap it up, fellas, and get ready for a Week 12 action.
Yeah, that does it. You can catch myself on cash and tournament breakdowns on footballdiehards.com. You can check out myself and Bobby Gomez, former Millie Maker winner, Wednesdays and Sundays. That's 8:15 and 9 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Justin, you've got Digging Through the Crates. Bob, you have like a few small little things. No, Bob does literally everything else on the website. So for myself, at Kyle Tweets here, for Justin at Justin Lonero, and Bob at Football Die Hard. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We will catch you next week.